I invite you to settle yourself even more comfortably where you're seated. Just be aware of your breathing for a moment. Maybe you rushed in. Might need to kind of take a centering minute. To be in community is to be part of a shared body. May this body breathe and be together in a spirit of hope. And may it be held in comfort. May those who seek consolation, strength, and healing for themselves and others, may they find it in the solace of this moment. A community is a body. It is as strong as all the human beings who've ever gathered within its walls. It is the power of all they dreamed and all that they have done. A congregation is a body. It is as vulnerable as the most newborn and untried of its members. It is ancient, and it is ever renewing. How do I bring myself, my energy, my body into this community? Let us ask ourselves, how do I bring myself, my essence, my energy into this community? We are not consumers, we are seekers. We do not come to share a product, but to create an experience together and an expression of our need for spiritual meaning and our shared values. Every time we are together, in any space, in any meeting, in any gathering, in any program. A community, each community is a story. It is a story of lives that are interwoven, brought together in a specific place and time for the simple purpose of caring for each other and helping each other along the arduous path from birth to death. This community is a vision. It is a vision of unity amid diversity and division. It is a vision of reverence for all of creation. It is a vision that beckons us beyond the concerns of our own skins. It is a challenging vision and a demanding one. In this silence, may we abide as a body in the spirit of faith, hope, and love that is the story and the vision of this community. In this moment, may we come into a fuller awareness of our importance and our impact within it. We will sing as part of our meditation this hymn that is from the Gates of Repentance, which is part of the High Holy Days, their hymnal, the Jewish community's hymn book for the High Holy Days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which began on Friday evening at sundown.
Who can say I am free? I have purified my great heart. There are none on earth. There are none on earth. A new heart I will give, not a stone, but one that frees. A new heart I will give, and one that's free.
Unitarian Universalism is a pluralistic faith tradition, and we draw wisdom and respect wisdom from all the world's religions. Today, obviously, we are really drawing on the wisdom of the Jewish tradition. In Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year that I believe I just said began on Friday at sundown, there's a ritual observed by Jewish congregations, many of them called tashlich, which is a casting away of things that you want to get rid of. It's a symbolic gesture, and so people take sometimes stones or sometimes the bread, and they cast it over moving water. So obviously around here we have the ocean. It could be a brook or a stream or whatever. So this reading by an unknown author is a reflection on the tashlich ritual, read by Gloria Kozlowski. Hi, baby.
Here I am again, ready to let go of my mistakes. Help me to release myself from all the ways I've missed the mark. Help me to stop carrying the baggage of my poor choices. As I cast this bread upon the waters, lift my troubles off my shoulders. Help me to know that last year is over, washed away like crumbs in the current. Open my heart to blessing and gratitude. Renew my soul as the dew renews the grasses.
In the secular New Year that we observe January 1st, it's traditional to make resolutions, and people choose a lot of ways to do that, but I think that we can generalize that a lot of them have to do with like fitness and health and developing new habits and being better organized, things like about their personal life. But in the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, the fresh start is always centered around relationships. To be written in the book of life for the new year, as happens in Yom Kippur, and you want to be written in the book of life for the new year, one has to engage with an internal process where everyone acknowledges that they've caused harm somewhere. And they go to that person that they have harmed or where the relationship is broken, and they ask for forgiveness. The fact that everyone in the community is doing this highlights the reality that as human beings, we're all going to screw up. Everybody's going to fail. It's just assumed. Presumably, everyone in the community has a few phone calls to make. And if you don't, you had a really good year, or maybe you're just like, you know what I mean, not in touch with the mistakes you've made. So since this happens every year at Rosh Hashanah, it becomes a communal spiritual practice that everybody just gets better and more comfortable doing over time. Picking up the phone. I know kids don't talk on the phone anymore. Who picks up the phone anymore? I'm doing this. But anyway, making a call or making an appointment to talk in person and saying, I'm sorry. I hurt you. How can I make it right? And it's not considered a full apology unless that last phrase is genuinely meant. How can I make it right? Is there anything I can do to make it right? And so that invites a conversation where two people are invested in this process and who both have been doing their own searching and fearless moral inventory, as we say in the 12-step programs, figuring out how they might repair the relationship. Maybe they need to talk it out some more. Maybe somebody needs to learn something. Maybe somebody owes somebody lunch or a new car. I don't know. It's for them to work out. But I do know that according to Jewish law, one is not obligated to forgive slander. There is an expectation that if there is an apology made, a genuine apology, and attempt to make things right, that one should extend forgiveness. But you don't need to forgive slander because there can be really no reparation made for the destruction of one's reputation. That's deep. And even more profound, one cannot offer forgiveness for murder. Because in Jewish law, you got to go to the person that you have harmed themselves. No one can speak for the dead. Not any representative of the family, not a representative of God, the rabbi. And so there is no absolution offered for the taking of a life. The crime remains permanent guilt for which there cannot be forgiveness. Very different from the Christian tradition. Now, of course, most of the harms that we all cause in our lives are much, much, much less serious than murder. But as we consider the flow of accountability, apology, and forgiveness in the ways that people and communities move through painful dynamics and hopefully move forward, having faced the failings, I want to consider with you how often I see these days that people feel absolved of harm because they say, well, I didn't do anything illegal. It wasn't against the law. Now, as they say, nature abhors a vacuum. And people who've never been introduced to practices and rituals of right relationship often default to legalism. Nothing to see here. What are you complaining about? It's no crime. And I observe this happening more and more often in public discourse. And it really concerns and disturbs me. watch it in conversation, on social media, in the news, I think, well, God, if young people especially never see sincere apologies offered and received, if they never see forgiveness offered or withheld, they don't see this exchange as natural and a really important part of living in the world with other people, how are they going to ever learn the contours of what is ethical, what is right, and what is good? So if we don't develop practices from a young age that require us to think about how our actions affect others, we really become narcissistic. And we really miss out on beginning to develop an understanding that everyone in the room and everyone on the street with us also has an inner life and a reality. It's terrible because what happens is we develop what the young people are calling main character syndrome. Everyone else is just a bit player in your personal drama. Yeah, I didn't commit a crime, so I'm just moving along. It's okay. I was in a coffee shop in Lenox a couple of weekends ago, and one of my earrings fell out of my ear on the way in, and I bent over to pick it up and to look for it. And as I was bent over in a fairly vulnerable position, a man, I think probably, about my age, rushed in, because there was a line, he rushed in and practically knocked me over. There was serious hip action. I mean, it was like it wasn't subtle. And when I recovered myself, I got in line behind him, and he turned and looked at me, a little bit of guilt, I hope, right? He kind of looked at me, and I looked at him, and I just said, wow. And here's what he said, because he knew what he had done. Here's what he said, I'm with them. Because he was in line with, I think they were his kids. He defensively assumed that I was accusing him of cutting in line. I wasn't. I just was thinking, back where I come from, when you knock somebody down almost, you just might say something like, excuse me. I don't know. But what was fascinating is the kids apologized to me on his behalf. And I said, thank you, but you don't have anything to apologize for. I'm really sorry that you're so good at it, apologizing for him. It sounds like you've had a lot of opportunities to do that. And they were like, oh. She said the quiet part out loud. And he was right there. I just thought is that a dynamic? This kind of defensiveness and unwillingness to offer so much as an excuse me, or as my grandfather used to say, pardon me. I love that. After doing something insulting or destructive, even if by accident, is part of the litigious and legalistic game played by political leaders. And it seeps down to the rest of society. The thinking there goes, if I admit I'm wrong, if I offer an unqualified apology, I will be seen as weak or culpable or a loser. Not so, not so. A good apology demonstrates self-awareness, maturity, and integrity. It's a form of love and empathy. There's no loss involved unless someone has such a fragile ego that they can't tolerate admitting that they make mistakes like everyone else. So we should talk also about bad apologies, because those exist as well. And those are very much meant to protect the ego, not to repair relationship and start anew and to do better. The classic bad apology goes like this. Sing along if you know it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you feel that way. Exactly. Or I'm sorry if I offended you. Which broken down really translates to, I don't care about your emotions. You're not safe with me. Because it's not it's not an actual apology. It's a form of domination. There's no respect expressed for someone else's experience. There's no admittance of wrongdoing. I'm sorry you feel that way. When we make a sincere apology, we might not initially understand exactly how we did harm someone. The key then is to create an emotional environment wherein somebody feels safe to explain themselves, to explain what it's like to be in relationship with us, to explain and share their experience of the impact we had on them and why a certain behavior might have harmed the trust and the bond between us. So I'm sorry I offended you, I'm sorry you feel that way, shuts all of that down. It's a preemptive control strategy. It comes from insecurity and cowardice, two qualities that we have all brought in some measure to relationships. We all have our moments, and we often resist apologizing because we fear being rejected. And that's it. We get real tight and we fear to hear, I can't forgive you, you're a terrible person, and this relationship is over. You know, it may be that the relationship does need to be over. That can be part of growth too. It's okay. Maybe the relationship needs to be over for a time. Maybe there needs to be some time spent apart for deeper reflection, but whatever there should be, it takes honesty and openness and courage to discover what is best together and with compassion. It's very hard work, that kind of honesty. Another bad apology is the one that has been coerced. And I think we've all heard this probably as kids, especially if you had siblings. You apologize to your brother right now, or else. Now, I hated that because I had such a strong sense of justice as a child. I would follow my parents around going like, but you don't understand. You weren't there when it really happened. And they'd be like, go, be a lawyer someday. I don't want to hear it. I just want you guys off each other's throats. But there's also the more demanding, a painful situation of being demanded to offer an apology when we have simply spoken our truth and are being punished for nonconformity and honesty within a family or community culture of silence and secret keeping. We all probably know at least one person who weaponizes their past trauma and woundedness and keeps being hurtful and destructive in relationship or in an organization, but they can't own up to it because they genuinely do not see themselves as perpetrators, but always as victims. This is really, really hard. It's another form of main character syndrome, where this person is unable to take responsibility for their impact on others because their self-image is so much tied to, but I meant well. I'm not hurtful because I meant well. And this is where we have to understand the difference between intent versus impact. It's okay if you meant well, but this was the actual impact. These people are particularly destructive because they tend to coerce apologies from people who confront them. And they have others coerce apologies on their behalf. You might have, this might be familiar phrasing from your family dynamic, for instance. Nona's really mad at you for saying that, she was mean to your partner or something. You better apologize. Or your mother wants you to apologize for being angry at her for violating your privacy, so go in and apologize to her. This is really hard because the punishment then for not apologizing is estrangement, the silent treatment, freezing out, until there is this kind of emotional training of the so-called perpetrator or the one at fault to hold silence, to let abusers continue to be that way, and then we violate our own integrity because we're constantly being trained out of our honest reality. You don't get to have one in this kind of a system. Does that make sense? Okay. When I consider the extraordinary survival of the Jewish people over thousands of years, exiles, expulsions, and genocide, I wonder that part of the strength of the group identity and solidarity is that everyone is assumed to have reasons to both offer apologies and to receive them with grace. All of communities stand to learn from this example. The Hebrew prophet Isaiah, who lived in the 8th century BCE, speaks about the emotional toxicity of communities that do not engage in practices of right relationship, practices of reconciliation with themselves and God. And these are very old words, but they will maybe resonate for us today. The way of peace, he writes, they do not know. And there is no justice in their paths. Their roads they have made crooked. No one who walks in them knows peace. They have dragged their iniquity, their avon, along behind them on cords. And in that word avon, the Hebrew word avon, there is an implication of twistedness and like perversion. And so it's the way that when we can't be in accountable relationship, it warps us. And we drag that along with us into community. We cannot create peace and justice anywhere if we don't pursue it in relationships, in our own intimate lives, and in our communities. Our theological tradition of Unitarian Universalism rejects the notion of original sin, which may be something you received in your upbringing that taught you about sin and asking for forgiveness and going to confession maybe. We believe rather that we are born in original blessing. And we have free conscience and free will, and therefore we screw up. We miss the mark, which is the etymology of the word sin. The point is to keep learning and growing, and that continues the blessing. We all have a daily opportunity to clean the slate, even an hourly opportunity. And sometimes the slate needs a little bit more than just a cleaning. Sometimes the slate needs a whole renovation. But we have the strength, the courage, and the support and encouragement of this community to do what needs to be done. The Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic Jewish movement, used to teach, believe that each day the world is created in you, and that you yourself are born anew each morning. We can always begin again in love.
What you have in your Chil hymnals is 1037, we begin again in love. But how it functions is as a litany, which means there's some narration that happens, and then there's a congregational response a lot of us have done before. So we'll sing it now once, and then I want you to maybe look at it the first time or two, but eventually to get off of the page, to internalize the words, and to listen to the narration. Maybe that impacts how you sing it and how you relate to the words that we sing.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. again in love.
For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin our step in love.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
Forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in Rabbi Yunim, a Polish Hasid, said, "The universe is always incomplete, always beginning. Unlike a vessel that one works at and finishes, putting it aside, it requires continuous labor and unceasing renewal by creative forces. Let these forces pause 1 second, and the universe would revert to primal chaos." Friends, as we go forth, know that this creative force is also always at work within each of us, and we each have the opportunity to remake our lives anew with each dawning sun. May we go forth with grateful hearts to love, to serve, to learn, and to give and receive the grace that makes all this possible. Let the people say, Amen and Amen. Peace be with you.